So good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our Small Business Solutions Series workshop. We are excited to have our results of our survey today that we'll be walking through. But before that, I'm even more excited to welcome and thank our our sponsor, Hawthorne Farm Athletic Club. And with us today is Heidi Sivers-Boyce, Dr. Heidi Sivers-Boyce. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Deanna, and I'll just start my little video while we have our last few participants show up.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Deanna. Hawthorne Farm Athletic Club is my local, family-owned business with deep roots in this community. My team and I are so proud to sponsor the Washington County Small Business Solutions Series. You all have been an invaluable resource through good times and through challenges. If you have not visited Hawthorne Farm Athletic Club, you can find us online at hfac.com or visit our physical location in Hillsborough, just across the street from the Washington County Chamber offices. With each Small Business Solutions Series meeting, while we wait a few moments to let everyone arrive and get settled, I just like to provide this wellness minute reminding all of us business leaders the importance of taking care of our physical health, in addition to taking care of the health of our businesses. Whether with Hawthorne Farm Athletic Club or elsewhere, there are so many options to incorporate physical activity into your holiday fun this month. One tip for the holiday season is to try and find some accountability that might come in the form of taking an in-person class, working with a personal trainer virtually or in person. Routines are just so heavily interrupted right now. Having someone else helping you fit in fitness can really make a big difference. Make sure one gift to give yourself this holiday season is the gift of self-care. And if you could use any support in doing so, please let us know. We always have tours available for Washington County Chamber members. We love getting to know our local business community better and would absolutely love to connect. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your support and appreciate the reminder as we go into this holiday season where, overindulgence might be a temptation and an actuality that, there is a place and a space where we can go to, take back control, right? So thank you very much. Excited today to talk about the results of our latest State of the Business survey. But thought I would take us back in time. Survey results during a pandemic, not always as uplifting as we want them to be. So what I thought I'd do is go back through our history. And I first of all want to thank and recognize the members of our Small Business Entrepreneurial Council. Several are on the call with us here today that worked really tirelessly throughout the pandemic to ensure that we were sending out regular surveys to our business community and making sure that, government elected officials and government that were receiving dollars, whether it was through the CARES Act or what do we call it, ARPA funding dollars that went directly to businesses, that they had good information about what would be most helpful. So we collaborated with several of the local jurisdictions prior to releasing any of our surveys to ensure that we were asking questions that would be helpful for them as they were contemplating how to get those dollars out as quickly and most effectively as possible. So I thought I would just walk through a little bit of our history of surveys, starting that were pandemic-related surveys. So one of the first ones we did was in May of 2020, when we normally would have hit the streets doing our business walk. We quickly changed that over to an electronic survey and had some really great response from that. If you remember, just kind of think back, May of 2020, right? March 17th, I think, was the date we had the stay home, stay safe. Businesses and the May time period starting to open up a little bit. And so the first question we asked in May was, are you open for business? And we had 78% of our businesses said yes to some extent. So some, the wide open, was not any of them, and some had curtailed hours. But I think the most important point of that is in May of 2020, 28% of the businesses that responded were still closed. And think about that impact on our economy. So at this point, we're better off, which is my point of walking through all of this data. The history of it is that while it seems like we're taking, small steps in comparison to where we've been, we've made a lot of progress. This also from the May 2020 survey. If business disruption continues at the current rate, how soon will your business be at risk of closing permanently? 41% of respondents said 3 to 5 months or less. 41%. So think about that. Had it gone on any longer, we would have lost many more businesses than we did. And then at this time, what are you most concerned about? The top three: losing work, customers, clients, customer traffic, and employees' financial well-being. So May 2020, really concerned about whether, curtailing their hours, limiting the number of staff. Obviously, business owners quite concerned about their employees' well-being. So then we went to June of 2020, where there was it was focused on PPE. So remember, as businesses started to open, there were a lot of requirements for PPE, and small businesses that had been shut down or partially curtailed had another expense that they hadn't anticipated coming on top of them. So that was really around what kind of PPE do you need, how many sets of gloves, and then you saw local jurisdictions, pivoting those dollars, those CARES dollars, into buying, massive supplies of PPE and utilizing the business recovery centers for distribution and setting up those order forms and processes to which businesses could come in and pick up PPE for free. Huge help, especially for, highly regulated businesses like restaurants, hotels, if they were open, our retail sector where there was a lot of turnover. Any of your personal services that were functioning were having, they had very strict PPE requirements. If you were a hairstylist, between every single client, you changed everything. So everything went out. So huge amount of expense that, a lot of those businesses contemplated. Does that really still pencil for me? So again, at that time, June of 2020, we are asking, are you currently open for business? 80%. So we went from 78% to 80% in a month. They were fully opened or opened with modified footprint and hours. The next survey we did was October of 2020, and it was called the State of Business Survey. And the question that I thought was interesting is your company currently being impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak? Again, October 2020, 93.3% of respondents were being impacted by COVID in October of 2020. And if so, how? Reduced customer sales, 85%, restricting spending due to uncertainty, 54%, operations, curtailed days, open hours, other restrictions, 50%. And then the question, what would be most helpful to you? And at this point, again, we're in October of 2020. The top vote getter was, if Washington County would please open up fully, would be helpful, right? That was a common theme of when are we going to open up? It reminded me of those old commercials, before the holidays. Was it Best Buy? Open, open, open. Yeah, that was our business community at the Washington County Commission. And also additional resources, financial resources, 38%. And then for April of 2021, we did our Washington County State of Business Survey. And is your company currently impacted by COVID-19? We're now April 2021. 98% of business say yes. If so, how? Reduced customers, lost sales, 91%. We're starting to restrict spending due to the uncertainty, 55%, curtailed operations, 48%. And then how could you be impacted in the next 90 days? Operations, 70%, sales, 67%. And here's the interesting one, workforce, 40%, April 2021. And think about the, unemployment incentive or enhancement was still in play, didn't come off until September of 2021. So a lot of things change very rapidly depending upon what's happening. And again, I think you're going to see workforce is going to continue to climb up the list. It was, I think, the third top vote getter. I'm going to suggest that would be one or two if we did that survey today. All righty, I'm going to go find my survey. All right. So any questions so far? Comments? This, just so you know, let's make this a dialogue so you don't have to listen to me the whole hour because that would bore anybody. So feel free to just chime in. So this is our survey that we launched in November, just closed it in early December, had 101 participants. The other thing I would mention in terms of our surveys through the pandemic, as we began to open up, we had fewer respondents to the surveys. At the beginning of it, everybody's like, yes, right, I'm at home. I'll fill out your survey, you betcha. I might take an hour or two to do it. And then things have changed. So I really don't want it. I wanted to have at least 100 people respond, which we did. So I'm happy about that. So if any of you participated, I want to thank you for that. So here we are in November of 2021. Is your business currently being impacted by COVID-19? 79%. So we're heading in the right direction because remember, we were at 98% at one point in time. If so, how? Reduced customers, less sales. So that's a common theme, right? A common theme that not everyone is still comfortable being out there. The market is causing us to draw on our line of credit. I'm going to actually just move this into a descending. There we go. Lack of certainty, government restrictions beyond general guidance. So that is a statement, I think. And then continuing to restrict spending because of the uncertainty. And here we are, December 2021, heading into 2022, and we have a high degree of uncertainty still in terms of what's happening. I think every time we talk about a new variant, we kind of go backwards like 25 steps, right? How could your company be impacted by COVID-19 in the next 90 days? Once again, I'll just switch this so we can go to see the highest. Sales, supply chain. Again, now, if a year ago, when we were doing this survey, we didn't probably include supply chain. And if we did, I don't think it would be as impactful. It certainly wouldn't be the second top need and concern at this point.
Deanna, I think it'd be interesting too to see, I think those two kind of have a relationship as well. I mean, you can't sell what you don't have in your shop, or you can sell it and hope that it comes in and move it. But I wonder what percentage of the decrease in sales are because of the supply chain.
Right, and then if you look at the fourth, top is workforce. So you can't sell something if you don't have anybody to sell it for you, right? I can't get it, can't sell it. Don't have anybody. Yeah, I mean, now you're seeing sort of how these things, I think you're absolutely spot on. These are all have some level of correlation between them in terms of the challenges that they're experiencing. And then we just wanted, these are just demographic questions. So we'll move down out of those. Always interesting though. Since January 2020, how has the size of your workforce changed? So, and this is again, 2020 in January. So we were still kind of looking at what was happening. As a reminder, what that little thing that's happening in China, and we're not sure what that means to us. And should we be concerned? I don't know. what does that look like? So I remember those. I remember I was actually at a conference the early part of February 2020. I've probably told this story before. And I was in a breakout session, and this is a conference that normally is out of state, but it was in Portland this time. And so I was in downtown, at the Marriott and at a conference, and I was listening to an economic expert. And he was talking about, remember, we were all talking about the recession, and everybody was super worried about the recession in January, going into 2020. And he was actually, saying, here are all these signs of things that are happening in our economy. Absolutely none of them, are pointing towards a recession. So that doesn't concern me. I'm not really concerned about a recession. But he wrote something on this whiteboard and circled it, and he said, but that, I don't know about that. I just don't know. And he wrote the word virus. And that was in early February 2020. And I remember that. It's haunting me, actually, because I'm like going, that is the impact that's had on our economy and our lives. Amazing that we were, kind of dismissing it in early January and February. So if you notice, the staffing levels have remained the same. Keep in mind that 99% of the businesses in Oregon are small businesses. So and many of them are solopreneurs, and so oftentimes this staffing levels won't change dramatically because they're pretty small shops to begin with. How do you expect employment levels to change over the next 12 months? Find my question here. So decrease, I'm trying to, there it is. So staffing levels will be basically unchanged, 50%. So for the most part, half of the respondents don't anticipate. And then we have 16% that, plan to increase by 1 to 10%. The decreases are much smaller numbers in terms of, especially like decrease by more than 20%. That's about 6% of respondents.
That's great to see that, Deanna. I mean, if you add that all up, only 10% of businesses think their business will decrease. Now, it would be great if that number was 0, but 10% is better than 51%.
That's correct. And again, to me, it's about seeing trends, right? You're starting to see some things happening. And I think also that the increase number is small because, again, a lot of small businesses are like, I'm not planning to hire staff at this point because I'm uncertain. But also, we'll get to the next question. How is the cost of compensation, including benefits of your employees, changed since January 2020? Total compensation per employee is generally unchanged, 37%. And then we had total compensation per employee has increased between 5 and 10%, about 23%. More than 10% is 22%, fallen more than 10%, 14%. So it's obvious either it's unchanged or it's trending up, and we can see that. I mean, we know that because we can drive by any business and see, especially restaurants and fast food. They're I think it was somebody was telling me that they drove through a Panda Express, and they were offering, I think it was $100,000 signing bonus for a management position. Now, I want to tell you that I contemplated that for a moment, except, I remember being a waitress and on my feet, and it hurt a lot. So that was quickly dismissed. But I mean, the point is that this is unprecedented in terms of where wages are going for those kinds of industries. Do you have any positions that have been open for 3 months that you are unable to fill? 39% said no, 36% said yes. So kind of split, and then not applicable. Again, small businesses that aren't hiring. But yeah, we're at that point. I would, guess that, back in, prior to the pandemic, you didn't have this kind of, weight on on Indeed to get candidates, which that's what I'm hearing primarily, is that the number of candidates in the pool has dramatically decreased, to the point of, where you're not getting, I mean, some people were talking, they would get 200 applications for a position and they're getting 2 or 3, dramatically decreased. Anybody have any comments? Okay, we're moving.
And I have a comment.
Please, thank you. very
Always
much.
do.
Always.
It would be interesting too if that was broken out by what the positions are, because I've heard on the other end of that some of the people that I know that are hiring for positions, depending on what it is, there's less candidates, but there are a lot more qualified candidates. So the ones that truly get through the initial screen are really good applicants. That might not be the case for a server or something like that, where it's a lot less of a requirement to get through that application process. But
I can speak to a little bit of that since I'm in a staffing company. So we are seeing it across the board for all positions that there is a smaller candidate pool. But from everything from manufacturing up, like we work on a little bit of everything. So we've got some high level executive positions within finance. We do some healthcare, we do tech, but candidates are getting multiple offers within a week. So we are able to find candidates for a lot of the positions because there's actually been a slight uptick in candidates coming in. But if our clients aren't moving fast enough, like we've had a client that works outside of Oregon in a different state, but works remote, is hiring remotely now for .NET developers, and they've removed the cap of their pay. They're like, we don't care anymore, just send us people. And we're still losing people, like every 3 candidates, I would say right now, is accepting another offer before we can get through the interview process. It's really a candidate market right now because you can be pickier since everybody's hiring and not able to fill those positions. So we're getting some really great skills, but depending on the level of position as well, like if you were in a more entry-level role, you can be pickier now and find someone that's going to pay you a more competitive wage or give you a sign-on bonus or have better benefits, where before you just kind of had to take what you can get to get your foot in the door somewhere.
That's been our on-the-ground experience. And the other thing we're experiencing that's kind of related is just people, the ghosting piece of that, where
Yes.
you interview someone a couple of times, or, you set an interview and then people just don't show. The harder part, we're such a relationship and people-oriented people, when you invest all this effort and get to know someone and then they just disappear, it's still a little bit of a little shock. We're just used to that communication. And I think that's happening, Deanna, whether you say like people are tiring of completing surveys or just not reading stuff, everybody's just kind of going in right now, I guess. But in the job market, that's been certainly true. So we are doing our best to move fast and still uphold standards at the same time.
Yeah, we've seen a large jump in that, especially for positions that are paying under the $20 mark. We've seen a huge increase in ghosting. It was actually in we just did an all company update, and it was one of our points, our bullet points to our whole team was there seems to be a huge fluctuation once we get below the $20 an hour mark of ghosting candidates, but we're seeing it across the board as well. People are tired of being in all the meetings and know that they have other options, and in my mind, like burning that bridge right now doesn't matter because you've got lots of options and later it might come back to bite you in the butt.
I wonder if it has to do with them just finding something. And, you know, like you said, if there's multiple job offers being thrown out to people and they get one, they're probably like, in this market, why spend the time to respond to the 8 other interviews I have? I'm just taking this job. So
yep, I agree.
Ashley, thank you so much for being on this call today. That's very helpful to have the inside information of what it's really like in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing. We have a client from Ireland and they're seeing the same thing and their home base. We do hiring for them here, but it's not just us.
Do they pay for relocation? Just an ask. Yeah.
No, they're not relocating anyone over from Ireland, but they were waiting to
No,
get their business license.
will they relocate me to Ireland if
I
I?
have been trying to do that and they weren't interested in it. Like, I'll go anywhere you want me to, just pay for it.
Right?
You
Ireland.
can't
I'm
go, Deanna, you can't go.
just like, man, that sounds like fun. Well, I know that one of the things we talk about here is, the process and, the fact that we always had, the first interview and then, another interview and then an interview with all of our team. And it's kind of like, yeah, we need to do that in one day, right? We need to get through all that in one day because otherwise, yeah, you're having people that are falling out really, really quickly because they have so many other options. And then, so the next question we brought forward was your workforce is currently, and this was to get at, working fully from their usual workplace or office, mix of working from usual workplace and from home, not applicable, or working fully from home. And you'll see the percentages there. Interesting, we did ask this question on one of our surveys last year, and the understanding, I think it was in the June, maybe, the June or maybe the October one. At that point, it was kind of like you expect your workforce to, it was a high percentage that was like, come back fully to the office. And so now, here we are. And from October 2020 to November of 2021, people have now realized that level of flexibility is going to have to be embedded in the workplace. And, the idea that everyone comes in and it, is obviously a struggle. If you are a retailer, probably not real helpful to have your sales, clerk and assistants at working from home. And, customers don't exactly want to do that. So I do think that you're seeing that people are now coming to a new reality of, okay, there are some things that I need to figure out. And the expectation for employees is going to have to be met with, what their expectations are and their desires are as well, because that's changed. Do you have a vaccine policy in place at your business? This is controversial. Obviously, both from a business perspective, a business owner perspective of, taking that step to make that requirement, from an employee perspective of, being forced in their minds to do something that they might have an issue with. And then also an employee that where there's not a policy in place, feeling unsafe. So this has been a real challenge for businesses to try to grapple with, where do I fall within that? And of course, many folks that I've talked about said, I can't afford to lose a third of my workforce. And if I put a vaccine policy in place, I'm losing a third of my workforce that I won't be able to replace. So you'll see that number, 41% of businesses that still not at this time. You've got 33% that are trending towards yes, all in-person workers must be vaccinated. No, but 19% are providing information. And then if you're one of those hybrid, in office or work from home, unvaccinated employees have restrictions around what they can do and where they can go and what they can participate in. So I think this is going to, start to, I believe that yes, it's going to start to grow but I think it'll be interesting to try to figure out, so what does fully vaccinated mean nowadays? Is that
Okay. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, does that mean a booster too?
I think it will at some point, but that question those numbers run pretty in line with the question right before it. So it probably,
right,
from, I don't know, maybe the ones that have a vaccine policy might be the ones that have more people in office, or I don't know, maybe I'm just reading into it, but
No, I think you're right. I mean, I do think that, if you take that step and you put a vaccination policy in, and require that for employees, you're obviously going to feel more comfortable with having, a more restrictive, work from home type of policy. Because, the safety, it kind of removes that safety issue as long as you're still maintaining the same protocols, in the office setting, which is still masking, sanitizing, all of those things are all still in place, folks. If you didn't know, those are all still in place. Okay, here we go. How do you expect changes in government regulation to affect business? Let's see how they thought. Oh, it's going to be negative, not good. Almost 50% are concerned about government changes in government regulations. And I think that this is probably from, different mandates that have been coming from the federal government, mandates from the state government. As I meandered through all of those surveys, it was a common theme about, at the state level, why won't they let us do this? Where they're too restrictive? When are we going to, when is Washington County going to open it up? A lot of, folks that were really kind of bristling against all of the regulations. So this didn't really surprise me at all. In the next 12 months, do you expect your business revenue to increase, stay the same, decrease? Let's see. So increase 52, almost 50, 51, 52% plan for that to increase. And so I think that's, again, positive signs that folks are anticipating that as we begin to get more people vaccinated, as the booster becomes more available, as the 5 to 18-year-olds take advantage of the vaccination, those kinds of things are making folks, I think, feel more confident in the economy. Okay, here's the other unpleasant thing to talk about is tax policy. In the next 12 months, do you expect changes in tax policy to have an effect on your business? A positive effect, no effect, negative effect? Well, it's negative. So tax policy always makes businesses concerned. And, I think that the conversation that's happening at the federal level, the Build Back Better bill, what does that look like in terms of who's paying for that? What is that going to shake down to once, it moves through the Senate, and what will that impact be on the businesses? So all of, they watch the same newscasts and read the same newspapers we do, and there's concern. Overall, how would you describe your current business conditions? And I found this one interesting, quite frankly. I don't think average is great. And when you look at our economy and things that are happening in our economy, the fact that we have this many businesses, 50% of our businesses responding said it's kind of average. It's not good. It's not good enough to be classified in their mind as good. It's just average. Any thoughts on that?
I think average is better than poor.
Well, yes, it is. It is better than poor, which was probably where we would have been had we asked that question back in, June of 2020. I think we were smart enough not to go there, because it's like, why do we need to see that? But I do think that that's telling that, there's still, not the robust economy that we're seeing in terms of, construction and things like that is not necessarily being felt by every business.
I think you could read those also as like optimistic, pessimistic, and
doomsday.
Uncertain. And a little average is more like uncertain, like the improvement in or increase in business and revenue is also balanced by the uncertainty of possible tax implications on the tail end of it. So I'm in the middle because it's uncertain. So it's more like optimistic, pessimistic, and uncertain.
Right. And I would say that, just as a reminder, we launched this, I think, towards the end of November, right after, property tax bills came due. So there's that. Do you think it's more likely that your business will get back to normal after the pandemic, or do you think it will have a new normal state of operations? Back to normal, about 20 some odd percent, new normal, right at 50%. So I think that everybody's kind of come to that same conclusion that, nothing's going to be just the same like it was, in January of 2020. It's going to be different moving forward. Some of the comments I thought were interesting. New clients every day. It's all at uncertainty, praying for normal, but doubting it. There's been a paradigm shift in thinking about finances, working in priorities, which all affect how I conduct business. So big changes there. Personal sensitivities will have more weight. Non-business travel and business travel will increase, and we will hopefully have more people staying at hotels. The new normal is unacceptable. I would like to add an employee. After the pandemic, business will be back to normal. The lack of good I'll read it. The lack of good leadership in Oregon has caused us to completely shift our focus and goals and future plans. Businesses do not have, this one I thought was interesting. Businesses do not have a pandemic problem. They have a government overreach problem. The question is framed incorrectly because government historically does not give back power it takes from the people. Our business has been successful when not shut down by government. We could scale up in 12 months, hire a number of workers, along with signing leases for multiple locations in Washington County. It would be foolish to do any of that under the current business conditions that our government has created. If government gets out of the way, we would continue to grow and invest back into the community. I do think that some of the uncertainty for business does have a lot to do with the regulations, right? And the fact that in a pandemic, the government really does put a lot of regulations in place as they need to. But when do they stop? When do they go away? What does it mean? How long will it last? And, will we ever be at a point where we don't have somebody telling us that, we have to wear masks in the offices? So I think that there was a lot of comments around, government regulations and the sort of impact the pandemic has had on government being involved with business. Now, remember back in June of 2020, everyone was pretty glad the government was involved with their business and, had available grants and opportunities for them that were necessary.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting too to throw that poll at the government, because I think there's this assumption that there is some sort of answer, and even government employees and legislators have no idea. I mean, they're reacting to what, just like a business, they're reacting what the current stimuluses are right now. And then you wake up tomorrow, and if there's something different, you figure out how to deal with it. And I think that's what the government's doing. But that's not to say I can understand exactly what those comments mean, but there is no black and white anymore. So.
Right. And I think it's all kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So had we not, done the close down and the stay safe, stay home, and a whole bunch of Oregonians would have, contracted COVID and, died from it, then, it would have been, what were you doing? What were you thinking? Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that these humans that are in these roles do the best they can with the information that they have. And I understand the angst on both sides. I wouldn't want to be in that role of making those decisions. That would be difficult. Okay, which of these do you think will increase the most for your company over the next 6 months? Cost of labor, there it is. Close second, cost of goods. I don't know if any of you have talked to folks that, get shipments or ship out. The cost increases that they are experiencing are breathtaking, 300% on regular shipments. Things that they, had been doing for years are costing, just to a magnitude of 100% increases on these things. So that's making, the challenge. And again, I think that gets back to that sentiment of average, right? Because even though the economy has seemed to, picked up and been robust, you've got inflation, you've got these other pressures that are really kind of, degrading those gains. And we're not obviously contemplated in any, business plan that might have been put together. All right, and an important question: what does your business need? And these are all kind of check all that apply. So, but it looks like additional funding would be helpful. Low interest loans, workforce support, a close second to additional funding. Support assistance with supply chain, and getting that cleared up. And I've heard that they anticipate the supply chain disruption could last as much as another year before they actually get that back on track. Low interest loans, 30%. Facility operations modifications, pretty low in terms of capital investments. If you were taking a loan or accessing a line of credit, how would you use the funding? General operations, the top of the list. And then we had a rather large number of people that had individual responses. Pay for equipment already purchased at high interest rates. So pay off some high interest loans. We don't believe in debt. I get that a lot whenever we ask, about loans and interest. Business owners don't like to have debt. So they've made that clear to me. And those that have high interest loans would like to get rid of doing that. Online presence, increase the online presence, increase wages, another response. Not be taking a loan. Yeah, there's a lot of consistency about we would not do that. Marketing. Invest in training in additional niche services, such as, social media classes for K-12 students, specialty reading methods, training, those kinds of things. So just expanding offerings and being able to invest in that. This was our feel good. We want to hear about something that was positive out of the pandemic. So made them kind of dig deep to find, what would they say, would be a positive. Having staff work part-time from home. Our flexibility and responsiveness to change have been positive. Working with clients via Zoom is a great way to go. New technology such as Zoom has helped us have more ways to communicate with clients and refer partners. How many of you have looked at, the Zoom and those kinds of things that you might have formally offered in person and saying, okay, we're going to stick with this Zoom, or we're going to stick with it doing it virtually as opposed to trying to bring it back in person? Any programs or ideas around that?
In our industry, it's just super. I think in most industries, people are going to want a hybrid of all the options now. I mean, curbside pickup or added delivery or virtual workouts or, the option of Zoom meetings. I think it's just kind of expanded the way we connect with one another. We've got to try and we business owners are going to have to try and keep that up. I do believe at the end of the day, people want in-person connection. It's, it's better.
Right.
But the conveniences and the access of these new options is just pretty enticing.
Right. I just look at myself in terms of what we're doing at the chamber. We're set up to do hybrid, knowing that, oftentimes we have, members that are coming from different parts of the metropolitan area, and remember 8 o'clock meetings when you had to drive across town to get to your 8 o'clock meeting, and the traffic and all. And I mean, people, that doesn't sound very appealing anymore. People are like, I'm going to stay here and jump on Zoom and join you that way. They want to have that option. And I think it's going to be important that we figure out how to do those things right. And it's, for us, it's a trial and error. Sometimes, it works well, sometimes not so well. It depends on the type of meeting and the type of format, how well it works. But I do think that, yeah, you're going to have to figure out, and I think that's going to be sort of the next conversation around, what kinds of products are available, what works well, and figure out how that's going to be a part of a capital investment for businesses moving forward. Other comments, anybody?
Our Zoom meetings work great for efficiency purposes because we have a Monday morning meeting with, our office staff and our field techs. And to have the field techs before, they would always come in, we'd have our 8 o'clock meeting. Well, a lot of these guys start really early in the morning, so they would have to leave their job site, come into the office for the meeting, then the meeting takes place, and then it breaks up, and then they go back out to it loses a couple hours for a 20-minute meeting.
Right.
The downside of a Zoom meeting is there's not a lot of like we call it water cooler talk, stuff. What'd you do this weekend? How's your family? That kind of stuff that goes by the wayside.
Right.
And it's more of a CB radio. One person talks, everyone listens. Then the next person talks, everyone listens. So there's
Right.
pluses and minuses to the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that the personal interaction piece of it is always going to be a component that you have to figure out how to maintain that. But also, I think there's folks that will always have an option. In some businesses that will have an option of working from home, and if your meeting that you're scheduling and need them to be at is on a day when they're scheduled to work from home, chances are you're not going to get them to get on the road and join you in that in-person meeting. So how do you make sure that you still can maintain that level of involvement and engagement? I think it's going to be a solution that's, a mix of in-person and online. All righty. I think this is our final question. Any additional comments you'd like to offer? Workforce remains our #1 issue, along with rising costs to do business. I expect my business may see a decrease in clients once pandemic restrictions end. Nonprofits need more operating grants from the cities and the states. Won't read those. Currently, I have too much to do. Amen. Me too. We hope pandemic will get over and we can get back to life as normal. I am disappointed with the lack of support from our local and state governments. They are quick to impose guidelines on small business that costs tremendously on both the front end, less retail sales, and on the back end, no tax relief, no employee tax relief, no financial assistance for our small businesses. Giant companies, I won't read all of that, but you get the point. This is another, rather critical conversation with regarding the SBA and the support for businesses. And I'm always disappointed to see that someone feels like they haven't received enough support. But again, I mean, this is talking about somebody who's actually put the cost of the shutdown over $100,000 and how that can be offset. So I do think that, there are still, that kind of, again, brings us to that average where people are not, things aren't great. And I'm not going to say they're great because I have still tried to figure out how to, pay off the close when we were closed down, provide loans for people that have less than perfect credit and that are sole business owners. Question number 17, our policy is new hires must be vaxxed. Every existing team is 95% vaxxed. So this is another, person that is part of that percentage of requiring vaccination. The biggest and most important issue that the chamber can address is the horribly and possibly illegal cat tax. My wish is that the new chamber, that would be us, size and influence from becoming the Washington County Chamber would result in focused attention to repealing the tax. This single issue has had more negative financial impact on my and all other small businesses than any other category. Please do everything possible to repeal this tax. We have some board members that are on this call. So from this person's, comments to their ears, please find ways to minimize government intrusion and to reallocate current resources to increase service for a safer community by increasing funding for police, fire, and social service providers. Food access is more insecure than ever and will require government support. Concern about the supply chain. Please end the mandates. Love being part of the community. Thank you for that uplifting. County employee, I read this one, I won't read that again. Training for small business owners to operate their business debt-free. And I think that that's another opportunity for organizations like the Washington County Chamber, especially as businesses continue to grow, but as for startups, right? It's how do we help startups look at the lessons learned from the pandemic. And, it used to be that you'd have X number of months, operating cash on hand and to start up a business. And you were never really that concerned about that until somebody closes your door and your cash register completely closes and you have no way to pay rent. So now we have experience, right? We've seen how that works. And we need to figure out how to embed these lessons in conversations with entrepreneurs that are thinking about starting a business, and how does this change that dynamic? But it would not be good for us to not get any lessons out of this process, right? I would say the same for, our state legislature as they come back into short session in February. There has to have been some lessons learned in terms of our state infrastructure for, the employment department, for, the rent relief, and, hundreds of thousands of dollars that are sitting there with a clogged up system. We have to be able to do better than that. We should be, compelling our elected leaders to find solutions to those issues in pretty short fashion. Other comments from folks? No comments? Well, I always find data interesting. We will continue to survey our members to get their input because I do think that it's going to be important for organizations like the Chamber to figure out whether it's educational opportunities that business needs, and if so, what does that look like? What are some, I know that we had a request for the Business Recovery Center to provide rapid testing for small businesses. That's become sort of the new PPE, if you will, of this rapid test, and they're expensive. And so we're looking at ways, okay, can you buy them in bulk and distribute them to small businesses? How would you do that? What's the cost? Those kinds of things. Having our businesses on the ground provide us with feedback and information, super important to us to be able to respond to that. And, and I think that our relationship with our local government helps that as well. We know, we work together and we say, okay, we're doing a survey, and it's like, what do you need to know? And we add some questions in regarding that to help them as well. All right, any final thoughts from anybody? You're all very quiet today.
Thanks for going over all of this.
Yeah, and I know a lot of work went into this from Elizabeth and Brad and others. And I think the data is really important. We've all been doing this for a long time. So just keeping up the endurance of asking these questions and having the policies, it's hard, but I think it's really important and I appreciate it. I think surveys like this, you bring out people, you read comments that are frustrations or look at results that are hard things. And it's good to do that, even though it's hard on top of everything else. It keeps our feet grounded. I think that kind of figuring out, people don't want to talk about the new normal, but I'm trying to like get all of us reinvigorated to imagine what the next year. I'm in an industry where the mask wearing in particular is just, it's going to stick around as an issue all next year. So we have to not just get tired like any workout, right? Like you got to get your endurance game going, not just get tired and say we're ready to move on, and keep being structured and smart and hold people's hand through the transition. One of the things we didn't talk about as much on the survey has been a big issue over the last year for us, is just that people's frustration levels are high. So anger towards employees, customers kind of letting their tension come out, and trying to keep creating a positive space, supporting your customers, giving them grace when they're having a hard time taking care of your employees. We're just following what we need to do. So all that kind of stuff, as hard as it is, and maybe, you don't get the rigorous engagement or discussion that we had early on, still important to keep it going. So I thank you very much for that. And I'm glad we're doing this.
As you were talking, Heidi, I was thinking, I bet we're never going to fly in an airplane again without wearing masks. Right? I bet that is one of the places where it's like, I never really was comfortable with all these people breathing around me. I didn't know. I'm real happy to have a mask on everybody, right?
Yeah.
I think, right? I think that's one of the areas, and the people that complain the most about doing it, I think they're, that would be the one area they'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm okay with it. Yeah, everybody mask up. All right,
Okay.
any final thoughts?
I just
Bill?
want to say thanks, Deanna. I should have put that I'm with the City of Beaverton's Economic Development on my, I didn't do it intentionally, and I don't know some of you, so thank you all for joining this. But thanks, Deanna, for doing it. I mean, this kind of information is really critical to help us design, relief programs that we've been trying to get, ARPA dollars. First, it was CARES dollars, which we got out the door. I know Hillsborough did a similar thing. Beaverton, we put out about almost $4.5 million out to small businesses in terms of rent relief and other things. And we understand it's never enough. And it's always frustrating to be a small business and try to survive all of this. But, it was really curious to me because we recently did our own employee survey, and the results are very similar. I mean, we're a microcosm of what you guys are seeing as well. And we've got folks that are on the front lines that are doing, site work and inspectors and things like that interact with the public. They've been customer facing since day one. They never got to go, work remotely. And you hear the same frustrations from them as you hear from everybody else. And for a long time, we were never in a position where our leadership thought that working remotely was a viable option for us because it was all customer facing in person. And we found that a lot of our back office stuff could be done. I mean, I've been remote since March of 2020, and I've done some occasional work in the office, and I do a lot of the business outreach, and it's only been recently that a lot of folks have been willing to have in-person meetings. So we've been doing more of that, but it's still not back to what it was, which was 100% before the pandemic hit. So thanks again for this data and for allowing me to hop on and listen in.
No, thank you very much. Of course, I know you're with the City of Beaverton, and I was trying to be delicate where they were besmirching government's name because I'm sensitive to that.
There's really no reason to be delicate because we need to hear that, and we need to hear. And I know that there's comments across the entire spectrum. So we hear good things. Hey, thanks a lot for what you guys have done, and we hear you guys don't do anything. Why don't you do more? So we're used to hearing that, and we've got thick skin. So continue to ask those questions and continue to give honest responses, because we need that to be able to develop these sort of programs and to be able to help where we can and get out of the way where we need to get out of the way. I think those are good comments as well.
Well, and I think that, local governments were, really demonstrated where they've made investments through the infrastructure, right? And you had local governments that were able to get CARES dollars, in the door and out the next week, which was a huge task of trying to figure out, how do you even figure out who needs what, right? But I always find local governments to be much sleeker than state government, right? It's just a difference in age and size, right? And able to really not get in its way as much as state government that, obviously much broader. But again, I would not want to be in those situations where making those decisions of closing business down, that couldn't have been pleasant for anybody having to make that decision. And again, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I frankly, believe that the loss of life, any life obviously is tragic, but having the numbers where we are in Oregon, I think is a testament to the fact that, we did some pretty hard work there to maintain that was a priority. It was a value for our state. And I'm not going to not be proud of that, frankly. So I think good decisions, but really appreciate everybody joining us here today. And we will be back again next year with a continuation of our Small Business Solution Series workshop. Want to wish you all very happy holiday. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thank you.
Dana.
You bet.